Okay, hey. Welcome to the podcast. I promise I'll get to the intro in a second, but first I've got an idea just like bursting from my head that I've got to get down on paper. Can you bear with me for just a second here? I promise it'll be quick. Okay, give me just a second. Thank you for that. Thanks for bearing with me. Is it me, or do you absolutely love like the 360 sensory experience of working on an old typewriter? So I've had this one for a couple of years now. It actually took me over a year to get it fixed up and tuned up and cleaned up, and I just had to find the right people. I'm not particularly mechanically inclined myself, but I have an appreciation for beautiful systems like this. There's something about the tactile experience, right? Of your fingers having to use some muscular tension to get that letter onto the page. Like you have to mean it. You have to really intend to put that word on the page. I love the sonic sensation that just makes it visceral, right? The vibrations coming from the machine. It's literally this 360 experience. And because this is an antique, there's also the smell. It's just an incredible experience, and it's gotten me thinking about some bigger, broader, and deeper issues, to be frank, and that's what I want to talk about today on the podcast. So, welcome to the podcast. I'm Ben, co-founder, CEO of New Minds, and host of the New Minds podcast. We're taking an intentional break this week from guests because I wanted to have kind of a different kind of conversation between me and you, sharing some thoughts and reflections, and finally a really, really important meditation practice that I think could be very poignant in this moment in time. And yes, it does have to do with the typewriter in a way, maybe not literally, but it's definitely a fantastic metaphor for what I want to talk about today. So a moment ago, I described this really pleasurable 360 experience that I get from working on the typewriter. It's become part of my daily writing practice, to be honest with you. Even if it's just 5 minutes, there's something therapeutic almost about it. And it's a good reminder for me about how, as we've evolved technologically as a collective, as a culture, as a society, we've gotten almost further and further away from the mechanical and kind of more and more into the ethereal, into the cerebral, into the intellectual and the abstract. Now, don't get me wrong. I am not an opponent or foe of technology. I'm no Luddite. I'm recording this right now in front of a magnificent feat of human technology, the computer, right? And I don't run from technology, but I've really come to appreciate different levels and aspects of technology and how they affect kind of our consciousness and how we relate to ourselves and our bodies and kind of the essence of what we are. Here's what I mean. Sort of this progression of technology, whether we're talking about, the typewriter, right? Now we all write on computers. We might do even voice to text, which takes us even further away from our hands. And it all started, writing and communication all started as an oral tradition, yes. But once we got to writing, for hundreds and hundreds of years, it was a very, very, motor experience. It was a brain to finger connection. It was very tactile. It was very visceral. And then we got to, technologies advanced. We had Gutenberg. We had other cultures had different versions of printing, of course. It got a little bit more removed from our bodies, but still, even at the level of the typewriter here, as I expressed, there's still that very physical experience. Whereas now we're getting kind of into the computer. It's kind of funny. I don't know if you've noticed this trend, but they're actually selling keyboards now that mimic that tactile sensation of the keyboard. There's a reason for that. It's because we long for that body connection, And that's really what I'm getting at today, is the importance of just kind of remembering that as human beings, we inhabit a body, and the essence of mindfulness really is where you're resting your awareness and understanding that your body, your physical body, the physical world, the elements, the 5 elements are really the vessel for your experience of reality. And the further we get from that, the more cerebral and floaty and abstract we get, the more disconnected we are. And I think this is a big piece of the message that we're getting right now from the crisis. It's like we're disconnecting from our collective body, which is the earth itself, right? So the typewriter is just one small metaphor, one small example. And like I said, this is not an anti-technology rant. I'm not the old man yelling at the sky from The Simpsons. It's really more of an appreciation and just a reminder and a prompt and a poke for you is, how can you get more in touch with how your awareness rests in your body, whatever the activity is, right? So here's another example. I was actually thinking about this a lot, and here's another example I wanted to show you. Think about the simple experience of having to flip a record, right? You're conscious of the fact that there's something mechanical behind the music. There's a human input. You can literally see the mechanical, physical grooves, which, if you know, is how the music is transmitted as vibration. It's just a whole different level of sensory experience. So there I am, showing off my record player. Yes, I'm a hipster, right? You can call me a hipster. But the hipsters are really onto something, right? This kind of like longing for throwback tech, whether it's typewriters or record players. And to be honest, these last couple of years, even cassette tapes are kind of back. They're kind of onto something because they're longing for that reconnection with the mechanical, with the source, with the process, less abstract, more connected. In example, let me talk a little bit more about this. So we've got, it's almost like the more we progress with, let's take the music example a little bit further, right? It's almost like, okay, here's the record. I was just talking about the record, right? We can see the grooves. If we had a really powerful magnifying glass, we could literally examine this closely and kind of see the music in a way, right? Now, is this still way removed from the live musician? Absolutely. And it's also no coincidence that live music is really where it's at again now these days, right? So we've got the record, and I'll skip a little bit in between. I'm not going to go into the 8-track, frankly, because I don't own one. But then we've got the cassette, right? A little bit more abstract and removed than the record, I would argue. We can still see some of the mechanics. I mean, you can literally like get your finger in there. Gen Xers like me have very, very, poignant memories of trying to fix tapes that had gone haywire and come out, and you're sitting there with a pencil or your finger and twisting it, right? So a little bit more abstract than the record. And then finally we got to the CD, and it's like, again, a little bit more removed from the mechanics of what's happening here. Like sound quality, yeah, absolutely. That digital sound, no one's complaining about that. Although, to be honest, a lot of people, the reason they love records so much is because they get that crackly vinyl feeling. There's something pleasurable about that, right? But again, the CD, a little bit more abstract than the cassette. And where are we today? Well, I could literally hold up nothing because it's all stored somewhere in the cloud in our apps, on our phones. It's the most abstract it could get, really. And so we're getting more and more removed from the source. And so whether that's with writing, whether that's with music, those are just 2 examples. And there's one thing, that we need to have a deep conversation with, way beyond this podcast, is there's not enough of the conversation right now about why we don't put energy and time and effort and attention and even financial backing into asking the question, why aren't our immune systems strong enough? Why isn't everyone's immune system strong enough to handle something like a COVID virus, right? we all know there are immune compromised people out there, and sometimes there's nothing you can do about that. But I think a huge percentage of this could be handled, could be met with a stronger collective immune system. And that starts with us. That starts with very basic things about how we come back in touch with our bodies, and we think about things like this. It could be as simple as trying to grow your own food. And just remember the magical process of photosynthesis, how the roots from the soil are getting nutrients and fueling the actual growth of the plants. And just remembering with all of your senses kind of where your food comes from, what it's composed of. Okay, so again, I'm not suggesting anyone go become a pioneer. There's not that many places really left to be one. If you did, there's kind of this homesteading trend that's out there. That's fantastic. I completely understand that impulse. But hey, I like my movie theaters. I like people. I like culture. So, I'm not suggesting everyone needs to go grow all their own food, but we are beginning to lack a very basic understanding and food. Of all these examples that I've talked about so far of things getting more and more abstract, that's probably the most relevant to today and to this crisis. So, of course, music gets more and more abstract until it's just invisible, right, in the cloud. Our writing, our creative processes get more and more abstract until they're getting farther and farther from our bodies. And our food, has gotten more and more abstract, more processed, more constructed, more modified than ever before. And that's a part of this narrative. That's a part of this narrative is how we've become disconnected from our actual cells and the food that we put in our bodies, which cycles through and then becomes our cells. So what are we putting into our body? This is the crux of the question about our immune systems to begin with. And it's not just that, it's the air we breathe. It's the energy that we surround ourselves with. Of course, it's a big, big topic in question. And that's why the guests that I have on the podcast, I like to chip at these piece by piece. Like every guest that I've had on has approached one piece of that puzzle, bringing their expertise and bringing their insight. And so that's why every now and then I want to have a pause from guests and just offer to the world what I have to offer on this particular piece of the puzzle. And so one thing that I think is really important right now that kind of gets to the core of all these is just reconnecting with our individual bodies. That's a form of mindfulness practice right there in itself. And one way to do that is to connect with kind of like the mother of all of our bodies, which is Earth, right? And there is a great form of mindfulness meditation called earthing. And it's a 3-minute clip I have for you. I'm going to walk you through an earthing meditation. All you need is your breath and a tree. Find those two things, get 3 minutes. You may want to even, if you're watching this on a computer, you may want to pause, pull it up on your phone, and go out to a tree right now and kind of follow along as a guided meditation. So enjoy, pause here if you need to, or just watch and listen and plan to go do it later. But I want to kind of help you, give you a process to sort of reconnect with elements with a big E so that you can kind of reconnect and come back to your bodies. So here we go. Okay, so for this earthing meditation, you need a buddy, a non-human buddy, specifically a tree, okay? So we're going to use the tree as kind of a brace and a guide for the meditation itself. So it goes a little something like this. You can also visualize the tree if you can't literally get to one. You don't have access to a tree. So sit on the ground, lean against your tree buddy. Close your eyes. A couple of extra deep breaths to get started and settled. And then for a few seconds, just watching your breath go in and out your nose. And by watching your breath, I mean putting attention on it. And then gradually what I want you to do is visualize yourself merging with the tree. Become part of the tree. You and the tree are kind of one entity. And however you visualize that, it could be the tree itself kind of growing into you, wrapping around you. It could be the other way around. It could be you expanding into the tree. Either way, you and the tree are one entity. And I want you to feel your roots deep in the earth. Deep in the earth's energy. And now those roots are growing downward. They're going down. They're going down. Those roots that you and the tree are sharing are going down. And I want you to take that all the way down to the center of the earth. Don't lose your breath, so come back to your breath as well. And when your roots have reached the center of the earth, here's what I want you to do. I want you to take any anxiety, any negative emotions, any stress that you're currently experiencing, and I want you to set it there. I want you to leave it there in the center of the earth. The earth knows exactly what to do with it. The earth knows exactly how to recycle your anxiety, your stress, anything. And then I want you to bring your attention and the energy back up the roots towards where you are now with your tree, all the way back up from the center of the earth. You've left all the anxieties behind, remember? Back up to the surface, and now back into you and the tree. And this time, take your attention and energy up into the sky. Don't lose that connection with the center of the earth. Now you've got a connection both up and down to earth and sky. And that, my friend, is a very simple earthing meditation to bring us back into the body and back into the elements. I'm back. Before we wrap up the show, I got one more thing to get down here into my beautiful piece of intermediate technology. So just bear with me. There it is. It's gold. It's gold to me. We'll see if anyone else appreciates it. Thanks for tuning in today, everybody. This was a break from guests, a little chat, a little philosophical chat with a very practical, grounding mindfulness technique called earthing. By the way, there's a wonderful organization out of Canada with a lot of resources related to earthing, and I will share that in the show notes. Check it out. Reach out with questions, with recommendations. We'll be back next week with a fantastic guests, and for many weeks to come. They're starting to line up. So we're going to actually run out of weeks for all the conversations ahead. Thank you for tuning in. Have a beautiful day. Keep it real, keep it inspired, keep pursuing your passion, keep cultivating your talents, and we'll see you next week. We'll see you very soon.